What's up, guys? Fantasy Joe back here with some more fantasy football content, bringing you a little bit of dynasty content today on this Tuesday. If you're new to the channel and you like the content, please subscribe. If you like this video, hit the like button. Any questions or comments, hit me down below in the comments and I will get back to you. So let's get into this video without further ado. So we are doing a dynasty wide receiver rebuild. Let's say you've got a fantasy football team you're stacked at running back, quarterback, you've got a solid tight end option, but your wide receivers are lacking in dynasty, and you're looking to make some upgrades, but you want to keep that complete team together. You want to trade some of your picks, you want to trade some of your bench players, you want to improve your roster while maintaining your high-quality starters. I put together two players that are fairly low level. They're both low level acquisition targets, but one of them's even lower level than the other one. But either way, I think you'll have a really good chance at securing either of these guys, if you want to, after seeing this video, and I think you will. So let's get into the first player right now. Okay, our first buy low player, who I think is a great player to be targeting right now in dynasty football, is Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton tore his ACL last year, but he finished his sophomore campaign in 2019 as the wide receiver 19 overall. He's a large wide receiver. He's 6'3", 218 pounds, coming out of SMU 2 years ago. His third year in the league was last year where he tore his ACL, so he's going to his fourth season this year. So let's look at his 2019 campaign where he absolutely dominated. He only had 124 targets, but he had hauled in 72 receptions, good for 1,112 yards and 6 touchdowns. One of the things that I also really like about Courtland Sutton is that he's consistently used down the field. He's a large body receiver who they throw the ball to deep. In 2019, he actually had the largest percentage of his team's air yards, with over 43% of the team's air yards going to Courtland Sutton, which is absolutely ridiculous. That was higher that year than Michael Thomas, who had 149 receptions, broke the reception record. I mean, just to put that into perspective, that's just how much Courtland Sutton was dominating in only his second year in the league, with pretty bad quarterback play, to be honest. So that's why I think he is such an acquisition. Currently, they don't have excellent quarterback play, but he dominated without it, and I don't think it's going to get any worse. I think Drew Lock isn't great for fantasy. I think they'll probably make a change, but if it is Drew Lock, worst case scenario, it's just like he's going to air the ball out. We know that. I think that's going to be really good when Courtland Sutton comes back and gets to play more football with Drew Lock, who's just going to be slinging the ball down the field. And lastly, I think there's enough sauce to go around in Denver. I know people are worried about, they've got Jerry Jeudy, they've got Tim Patrick coming back, but I really do see Courtland Sutton as the wide receiver 1 in this team. Jerry Jeudy is their wide receiver 2. And when you have two primary targets and that's it, even if you're run first team, which I'm not saying they are, they're pretty balanced and they lose a lot of games, so they end up throwing a lot. I think that Courtland Sutton is going to be an absolute steal when you look at that. When you only have two real main pass catchers, I mean, Noah Fant's there, but it's just like, I think he can maintain a pretty large target share, and I just don't think there's anyone that's going to steal a ton of targets away from him. I think he's the clear one, and I think he will continue to be, even though coming off this injury. And he's a guy who I think you could acquire pretty easily for, low-tier running back 2, a future pick, something like that. I don't think it's going to take a whole lot to acquire him, and I think he's a guy who could be a perennial wide receiver 2, maybe even back-end wide receiver 1. And if he leaves in free agency in a year, or that quarterback position in Denver improves, I mean, the sky's the limit for this guy. He's just a very talented receiver, and is going to get the opportunity this year, and I think the opportunity is only going to get better for him going forward. I don't think it's going to get worse, so I think this is absolutely the best time to go out and acquire Courtland Sutton for your dynasty football teams. Moving on to our next receiver, we got Gabe Davis. Gabriel Davis is a talented young wide receiver with a promising young quarterback in Josh Allen, which is why I think he is such a target to acquire. He is 6'2". He is a 4th-round pick. But here's the thing. One of the reasons I think that taking advantage of snagging Gabe Davis right now is so huge is because people don't really understand quite how talented he is, because he was coming out of that draft class that was so loaded in 2019. They were talking about there were wide receivers in the 5th round of that draft that could be starters for teams. They really did think that coming into it. He was a 4th-round pick. looked like an absolute stud as a rookie, even though he wasn't getting a ton of snaps and having to battle for targets with other talented wide receivers. He still looked very good, and I just think you can take advantage of buying some of these lower end of drafted guys in that 2019 draft right now, because people haven't seen enough to realize how talented they quite are, and so they're getting dragged down by this draft price that they have. They're not a second round wide receiver, or a third round wide receiver. He's a fourth round wide receiver, but in normal drafts, it's like Gabe Davis is probably a second round wide receiver. I think back end, maybe early third. So it's just like I think people should change that in their brains, because I think that's how you take advantage in this situation, is by realizing how talented he is now and the opportunity that he's going to be able to seize moving forward. Speaking of that opportunity, John Brown will likely not be on the Bills in 2021 if I had to guess. I just think that they're going to move on for him for cap reasons. I could see them trying to go out and acquire, a Von Miller or somebody like that to improve their team, make some moves in free agency. And you have a talented young receiver like Gabe Davis, you can let a guy like John Brown go. Cole Beasley, I want to talk about him. We saw him absolutely dominate last year. It was second team All-Pro for this Bills team. He is a talented receiver. He plays that slot role. He'll be back next year. He'll be back the year after that. He's in a 4-year deal with the Bills. But the reason I put this here is because we saw how much Cole Beasley was able to do on around 100 targets. And Cole Beasley, is a shorter down the seat, used more in the intermediate to short passing game than Gabriel Davis is. Gabriel Davis averaged over 17 yards of reception in his rookie year. So he's definitely utilized more down the field. He averaged 9.7 yards per target as well in his rookie year in 2020. And so let's just look at, he's got that quarterback, as we said, Josh Allen, who is very talented. And last year they threw the ball a ton. Josh Allen had 572 attempts. So I was just thinking, let's say John Brown does leave. The starting receivers are Stefon Diggs, Cole Beasley, and Gabe Davis, which is what I expect it to be. And then you take that 9.7 yards per target that he averaged, and you give him 100 targets. Nothing crazy, not 130, I don't expect him to be the new one or anything. But let's just say I think he'll get 100 targets next year. If we put him on 100 targets for 9.7, or a 20% target share, and 9.7 targets, you look at he would have 1,105 yards last year. That is more than 100 targets, but not by, I think that's 114 targets if you got a 20% target share from last year. It is. And I don't think that's ridiculous at all. Cole Beasley got around that. I think he could get that easily. I think now is the time to take advantage and get Gabe Davis before next year when he goes for 1,108 or something like that. He hauled in 7 touchdowns last year, only 62 receptions. Was a big touchdown guy in college. I expect him to continue to be in the NFL, especially the way Josh Allen plays and they utilize him in this offense. And yeah, I really do think that now is the time to go out, snag Gabe Davis. You can get him for basically nothing. Finished last year as wide receiver 54, had 599 receiving yards on 62 targets and 7 touchdowns. But when you really look into those stats, you look into the way this team is moving and the talent that Gabriel Davis has, there's no reason to think that he's not going to step forward into this role. I think he's a guy who could be a solid wide receiver 3, flex spot type of guy next year, and then maybe even back-end wide receiver 2, and then it's just going to steadily, I think he'll be a consistent wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, that range, or wide receiver 2 going forward. Especially, let's say 2 years from now, Cole Beasley, John Brown are both gone. It's Stefon Diggs and it's Gabe Davis. Who knows how good he could be then. If you like this video, please subscribe down below. If you'd like to see some more fantasy football content, I'll be bringing it to you all the time. So yeah, hit that subscribe button down below. Hit the like button if you like this video, and comment if you have any questions or any Dynasty wide receiver targets for rebuilds. Thanks. Until next time. See you later.